To all of you. I thank CSA executive members and President Dr. KMK Reddy for giving us the opportunity to showcase our cases. We have almost 10 to 12 cases. Now I request Dr. Shravan to start with. So, Shravan, you are showing first?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you can start. You just go for share screen. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, are you able to see, sir, my presentation?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
Yeah, able to see. Very nice.
Good evening, everybody. Today I am going to present a couple of cases. These two cases are done by Dr. Sridhar Kasturi, our head of department. Both the cases, we used IVL, intravascular lithotripsy. So we have coming to case number 1. We have a 61-year-old male patient who is at now diabetic and hypertensive. He underwent TMT outside and which was positive for inducible ischemia. So there they have done an angiogram. They have mentioned a single vessel disease and they have attempted PTCA to RCA outside, but they were unsuccessful. Patient continued to have chest pain on exertion and he came here for further management to our hospital. So we have done ECG and echo were normal and other blood parameters were normal. So this is the angiogram picture. As you can see, the RCA, it's a calcified vessel, and the mid RCA, there is a tight mid RCA, there is a tight lesion here. So we thought this lesion requires adequate bed preparation. So this was done actually some almost 1 year back. So here we have done this lesion initially with rotor-guided PTCA. We have inserted a temporary pacemaker through the right femoral vein and RCA was engaged using a JR7 French catheter. So the lesion was crossed with Fielder FC wire with fine cross microcatheter support and the Fielder FC wire was exchanged with the rotafloppy wire with microcatheter. Then the patient underwent rotablation with 1.5 mm with the usual pecking motion. This is a post rota. You can see the vessels are open. Then we exchange the rotafloppy wire with a normal cyan blue wire. Then we pre-dilated the lesion with 3 into 12 mm NC tract using guideliner support. Then initially we stented the distal RCA just before the bifurcation. We used 3 into 24 mm Zions Expedition stent. Then proximal to mid RCA we stented with 3.5 into 48 mm Zions Expedition with guideliner support. Then we post dilated the proximal and mid RCA with 3.5 into 15 mm NC tract. And the distal RCA we post dilated with 3 into 15 mm NC tract. So this is the final result. The final result was good with TIMI-3 flow and there were no complications during the procedure. So after 7 months, the same patient actually, he presented with unstable angina. So there were ECG changes with ST depressions, 2D echo were normal and his hemoglobin and other blood parameters were normal. So we have done his angiogram. As you can see here, there is only mild disease of LAD and the OM. There is total ISR of the mid RCA stent. So this is done after 7 months of the first procedure. So last time only we used a rota for heavily calcified mid RCA. So this time we wanted to use IVL for deeply seated calcium. As it was only a single vessel disease, so attempting a redo PCI was the best option. So we crossed the mid RCA it was a 100% ISR lesion. We crossed with cyan blue with Corsair microcatheter support. And then we dilated with 2 into 10 mm Tazuna followed by 2.5 into 15 mm NC tract. This is the OCT, we have used both the IVL and OCT for this patient. As you can see, the lesion is, the distal RCA is calcified. Here you can see the previous stent and there is neointimal proliferation. The stent in the distal RCA, there is neointimal proliferation, but the mean luminal diameter is good. The MLA is around 5.7 at the distal end. As you can see, there is a calcium and this is the tightest portion with minimal luminal area at this point is almost 3.3. I will show the analysis later. As you can see, the heavily calcified lesion, and there is neointimal proliferation here. Again, it is very narrow here. So the proximal and distal edge of the stent, we are having only mild neointimal hyperplasia, and the mid part of the stent where there is ISR is having a high, very high burden of neointimal hyperplasia. So our plan was to prepare the bed properly and then implant the stent in the mid RCA. As you can see here, like at this narrowest part, the minimal luminal area is almost around 1.7, 1.9 and 1.9. And the proximal and distal end of the stent, the minimal luminal area is more than 5, like 6.15. So like our plan was to implant the stent just in the mid RCA. So like we used like IVL, intravascular shockwave lithotripsy. Like after the predilatation, like we passed the IVL balloon, which is 3.5 into 12 mm balloon. Sorry. And we gave like 3 cycles. Each cycle consists of 10 pulses, so total 30 pulses of high pressure sonic waves. This is post IVL OCT. As you can see, this is the distal edge of the stent. There is only mild neointimal hyperplasia. So here there is a tight lesion, as you can see. There is calcium here with breaks within the calcium. This is the tightest portion. So after the IVL, like after predilatation and IVL, this is the IVL picture. Like after the post IVL, you can see the minimal luminal area. At the mid part, it is minimal luminal area is around 4.4 at the mid part, and the proximal edge and the distal edge, the minimal luminal area is more than 5 actually. So like after the IVL, the lesion was adequately opened. Following that, we implanted the stent in the mid RCA, like from mid to distal RCA. We used 3.5 into 38 mm resolute onyx. We implanted the stent using guideliner support. Then we post dilated it with the open NC balloon, which is a high pressure balloon. Like we used 3.5 into 15 mm open NC balloon, and we went up to 40 atmosphere. So this is the OCT following post dilatation. As you can see, this is the distal end of the stent. Now there are 2 layers of stent. So the current stent and the previous stent. The stent is well opposed to the vessel wall. The minimal luminal area also I will show you the next analysis. As you can see, the vessel is adequately open. So it's a nicely open vessel. As you can see, the distal edge, there is no dissection. The minimal luminal area at the distal edge is 5.2, and in the mid part, the minimal luminal area is 7.2, and in the proximally, the minimal luminal area is 9.9. So the vessel is adequately open. So this is the same thing, like in the distal RCA, like we implanted initially, there was 3 into 24 mm stent, and then 3.5 into 48 mm stent. Within that, we have implanted the present stent, which is 3.5 into 38 mm. As you can see, the mid part has 2 layers of stent here, and the proximal edge and the distal edge here has only a single layer of stent. So the vessel is nicely open. So this patient, like he is doing well now, almost like 5 to 6 months post procedure, he is doing fine without any chest pain. So in the previous case, we used initially we have done with the rote ablation, but the patient unfortunately came back to us. So we have used OCT and IVL, and the patient is doing fine. coming to our second case, like we have a 52-year-old male patient who is diabetic and hypertensive. This patient was diagnosed to have CKD recently, and he was started on maintenance hemodialysis in a peripheral center. So during the dialysis, the patient developed acute coronary syndrome, and his echo was showing RWMA with moderate LV dysfunction, and the patient underwent angiogram outside, which showed triple vessel disease. So they referred the patient here to our hospital for revascularization. So his blood parameters, his hemoglobin was 9.6 and serum creatinine was 4.9. He was oliguric and was requiring regular dialysis. So initially we admitted this patient in our ICU. We have given him dialysis. Following the dialysis, we have taken him up for the procedure. So I will show you the angio picture. This is the angio picture of this patient who is now CKD. As you can see, the RCA is non-dominant with mid-RCA total occlusion. As you can see, the it is a left dominant circulation. There is a distal left main bifurcation. Ostial LCX is usually calcified, and there is a tight stenosis in the ostial LCX. And even the osteoproximal LAD, there is around 70% lesion. And there is a tram track-like calcification in the proximal LAD. As you can see in this picture, the ostial LAD and the ostial LCX and the distal left main bifurcation, there is a calcified lesion here. And you can see the tram track-like calcification in the proximal LAD. So this patient was having hugely calcified vessels, and he was having risk factors. Patient was regularly requiring dialysis, and he was oliguric. So we thought that this patient is a high risk candidate for CABG. So we went ahead with PTCA, and during the PTCA, instead of ROTA, we used IVL because we thought that this patient is high risk for developing slow flow, no flow phenomena. So we used IVL for this patient. So LMCA was engaged. We went through right femoral approach. LMCA was engaged with EBU, 7 French guiding catheter. Then LAD was crossed with run through wire, and LCX was crossed with the BMW wire. We have done an IVUS. So in this, we have done IVUS and IVL for this patient. So IVUS picture of both the LCX and the LAD I will show you. As you can see, this is the first one is the LCX and the second one is the LAD. As you can see, the LAD, it is circumferential calcium. So even in the LAD, there is a circumferential 360 degrees calcium. In the LCX, you can see almost 270 degrees arc of calcium. And here there is a tight stenosis in the ostial LCX. Ostial LCX is having a tight lesion. This is the LAD and this is the left main. The distal left main is also calcified. So this patient was having distal left main calcium and ostial LCX and LAD calcium, and it is a left dominant circulation. So we thought we will directly go ahead with the 2-stent strategy, and in the 2-stent strategy we use DK crush. So initially pre-dilatation of the LCX was done with 2.5 into 12 mm NC-TREC. The ostial LCX was very tight with a huge chunk of calcium. So this is a post-dilatation LCX. After pre-dilatation, we have done dilatation of LCX and LAD together, kissing inflation in LCX 2.5 into 12 mm, and in the LAD we dilated with 3 into 12 mm NC-TREC. So after pre-dilatation of both LAD and LCX, then we used IVL. IVL we have used 3 cycles of IVL in LAD, osteoproximal LAD, 3 cycles, that is 30 pulses. As you know, the IVL, the balloon will be inflated up to 4 atmosphere. Then we give the pulses, each cycle consists of 30 pulses, 10 pulses. Then we give 5 cycles of shockwave lithotripsy to ostial LCX. So total we used 80 pulses. This is the IVUS, which is done post IVL. The first one is LCX and the second one is LAD. So as you can see the calcium, there are cuts in the calcium. You can see the LAD, this is usually calcified, the proximal LAD. You can see the calcium breaks here in the LAD. So the vessels were opened with breaks in the calcium, and following that we opened the vessel. Again we dilated the vessel. Like LCX we dilated with 2.5 into 12 mm NC-TREC, and LAD we dilated with 3 into 12 NC-TREC. So Then like we went ahead with DK crust technique. First the LCX was stented from the ostium. So LCX stenting was done with the 3.5 into 18 mm resolute onyx. Then we removed the stent balloon and the guide wire from the LCX, and then we crushed the stent in the ostial LCX with 3 into 12 mm NC-TEC balloon. Then the LCX wire was recrossed through the stent struts, and the struts were opened with 2 into 10 mm Tazuna. Then we performed the first kissing balloon dilatation with 3 into 12 mm NC-TEC in LAD and 3.5 into 12 mm NC-TEC in LCX. The first kissing balloon dilatation. Then we stented from left main to LAD, left main to the proximal LAD. So we used 3.5 into 38 mm resolute onyx stent, and we stented from LMCA to LAD. Then we have done the pot of the left main using a 4 into 8 mm balloon. Then later LCX wire was recrossed and the stent struts were opened with 2 into 10 mm Tazuna. After opening the stent struts, we have performed the second kissing balloon dilatation using 3 into 12 mm NC in both LAD and LCX. So we have done the second kissing balloon dilatation. After that, we post dilated the LAD with the same balloon 3.5 into 12 mm NC-TEC, and the LCX also proximal was dilated with 3.5 into 12 mm NC-TEC. So this is post stenting, the IVUS picture in both LCX and the LAD. As you can see, the stented segment starts from here. The LCX is nicely open. The ostium of the LCX was still deceased here. This is the LAD, and this is the left main. Left main is nicely open, but the ostium of LCX was still narrow. So like we opened the ostial LCX, we have done a second, like third time kissing balloon inflation with the same 3.5 into 12 mm balloon, both in LAD and LCX. But we went up to 18 to 20 atmosphere. We went to high pressure, and then we have done report of LMCA. And this is the final result. As you can see, the nice result, like both the vessels are nicely open. The ostial LCX is nicely open. So the final result was good with kidney 3 flow, and there were no complications during the procedure. Like unfortunately, this patient actually, coming to the course of this patient, like we have done the procedure almost like 2 weeks back. After the procedure, this patient, he was discharged on maintenance hemodialysis. He was requiring regular dialysis. After almost like 3 to 4 days of the after discharge, he came back with SOB, and then we have admitted him in our ICU, and then the CT chest was showing fluid lung infiltrates. So we have done the COVID test. The COVID came positive. He was almost there in our ICU for almost 7 days in our ICU. He was anuric and was requiring regular dialysis. He had multi-organ dysfunction and succumbed. Actually, he expired in spite of our efforts. So the result was good, but unfortunately, the patient had COVID infection and succumbed. And I thank one and all for giving me this opportunity to present in the Telangana CS. Thank you.
In Guru Chaitanya, you can start with it.
We'll have a brief discussion, then we'll go ahead with the next cases.
No issue.
Okay. I think on these 2 cases, any comments from the other members?
Actually, somebody asked, somebody commented that there is no overlap. The OCT picture is clearly, even angiogram, very well open. So what happens in OCT, if you take 3D, when you see the 3D picture, once it's endothelial longitudinal view, you will not see unless you take the cross sections. So if someone sees like a longitudinal, they may think that it's not overlap, but they're not true. You have to check the cross sections, because once endothelialized in longitudinal, you will miss the stents. That's very well overlapped stents. But if you see all the OCT cut, there is a deep calcium. This is called new term, paleoatherosclerosis. The paleoatherosclerosis also contribute to the neoatherosclerosis. So one of the major factors which can contribute. That's the reason, debulk as much as possible to prevent the further. Here if you see one of the cuts is showing like a hypodense area, almost like occupying the half of the lumen. That means like a probably patient had a thrombus, maybe underwent organization fibrosis, and that too because the deep atherosclerosis and multiple areas, the lipedema was there. So because of that, I feel sometimes though neoarthrosis is very common in less compared to BMS and usually occurs early within 2 years, and it is noted even at the end of the 7th and 9th month also. And so that's the reason I feel, because though it was well prepared in one area, I was also short, but that time area was about 5 square mm. So 5 is reasonably good, but patient developed, because when we saw the OCT again, there was a lot of deep calcium. That's the reason the patient was requiring a guideliner. When you opened also, it all the time for putting the balloon, for putting the microcatheter, for even placing the stents, he was requiring. It's a rigid cage. So because of that, we wanted to address the deep calcium, so prevent the palliarthrosis, debulk it as much as possible, so that future restoration, despite doing so many measures, some people are more prone for recurrent ISR. Unfortunately, actually this case was in one of the tertiary care center in the city. Doctor tried the wire balloon uncrossable lesion. So balloon they were trying, it was not crossing, because that they advised bypass to one single vessel. Then he came to us, then not needed, we'll go with rotablation, but unfortunately 7 months later he developed, but now almost he completed nearly 9 months. Now he's doing well.
Okay, good.
Okay, one. Sridhar, not about this case, you keep doing a lot of calcified lesions, complex cases. Did you notice any increased incidence of, we hardly saw stent thrombosis in between since long, but with COVID infections, did you notice any increase? Because one patient, we did a perfect job, post-bypass graft, and everything went well, and now day 3, he had obviously stent must have thrombosed. That's what I'm thinking. Did you notice any such increased incidence of thrombosis of late?
And we have done cases, but I have not seen any patient. Recently, we did primary, because now the test results are coming on 4th day. So by the time they are taking discharge, COVID test is positive. A very unfortunate situation. And we have not seen. We have seen one case of frank pericardial effusion, massive effusion, passing like a tamponade type of picture, and no CT findings. CT lungs were normal, and Guru has seen such that patient. We were sent an accident, and routinely we are sending COVID test that COVID is positive. And one lady, young lady, came with only 3 days onset of severe SOB and acute SOB with cardiogenic shock, VTBF. Then we have admitted, intubated. Next day, ECG showed like a type 2 infarction, like a ST elevation in AVR. Then we thought young lady maybe Takaya's presenting with cardiomyopathy with ST elevation. Then we took for angiogram. Surprisingly, angio was normal. And we have sent like even nasal swab as well as the tracheolaryngeal swab, but unfortunately both were negative. The next day, lady died. Unfortunately, maybe COVID. Sometimes 2-3 tests are becoming negative, other tests are becoming positive.
But in general, I think it is better to use more potent antiplatelet drugs like ticagrelor and prasugrel. If there is no contraindication compared, some of us still continue to use clopidogrel. Yeah. But in this era of COVID, where you are doing complex cases, definitely I think we should use ticagrelor maybe better because of better antiplatelets. And if possible, also started using some lomoglobin for some time.
Yeah, definitely. Because
after that, we need to be more careful when in this era, I think.
Yeah, COVID is more prothrombin. D-dimer, one of the risk factor, because the even mortality came down when they used heparin early in COVID patients with one of the marker. So definitely more they are presenting with the DIC, they are presenting with even pulmonary embolism, more incidents, and strokes, unusual strokes are also very common in COVID. So that's the reason they are, once the D-dimer, they are starting heparin very early in COVID.
What is the role, Sridhar, what is the role of newer oral anticoagulants? Nowadays, we are using a lot of this in COVID situations. Many doctors are prescribing. So what's your experience?
No, COVID is, suppose if they are recovering like
D-dimer positive, so all are starting Eliquis.
No, actually D-dimer positive, best thing is even ACC and AAC also, everything they recommended only heparin. Or once if the patient is recovering, they go into ARDS type of picture. That time, because steroid has shown 30% reduction in the mortality. the methylprednisolone. And
Reality trial. Reality
so other patient, once they recover, once they unfollow, that time you can switch on to the Novac. But I think early evidence is lacking, like in oral anticoagulants, other than
And there
heparin.
is, Dr. Sridhar sir, there is one question coming up on why, I mean, what was the need for a third crush in the second case? Instead of that, probably you should have done a maximum 30 to 35 millimeters dilatation of the opine balloon. Any comments on that?
Resetting. So if you seek the ISR, there are different types
No, in a
of
second patient, yeah.
see the SKY guidelines. So when there is ISR, is there in gap, is there under expansion, is there or edge?
No, I'm talking in the second case. In the second case,
Second case, yeah. Second case, can you?
opine used, right? In the
Pardon?
first case, second case, opine balloon used.
Open?
Opine balloon used in opine balloon used, right? But there is a
No, that time because the under expansion, because sometimes this is called now combination therapy. Now, even Rota plus IVL is also recommended. So the combination Rota and deep calcium, you can use the IVL. Sometimes if the Rota also, once now we are using Rota for this modification, not the total ablation of the calcium. That time still for everybody faces same kind of experience. Even after Rota, sometimes you have to use the guideliner because we have not debulked totally. Just to alter the complaints.
The question is, opine, when you are using the opine balloon, at what atmosphere pressure maximum you can go?
Actually, company recommended 35 to 40 atmosphere, but many operators, even we also use up to 60, 65 you can go. But there is a chance of rupture. The company is quoting that it is a the balloon rupture very unlikely, but we have seen 5-6 balloon ruptures. So
Okay.
it can rupture. If you
Okay, we'll go to the next.
recommended is 40 atmosphere, but even many operators are going up to 60 to 65.
Fine, sir, fine. Go ahead with the next cases.
Yeah, Guru, you can.
Dr. KMK, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, please.
Dr. Rayadu speaking.
Yes, sir, please. Good evening.
I have a small comment and a doubt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, are you able to hear me?
Yes,
yes, sir.
please.
See, both are excellent cases. The first case actually is a to my remembrance. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes,
We are
yes.
able to hear you.
The first patient is a relatively young man, 51 years. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
He has a heavy calcification.
Yes, sir.
And the second case calcification we can explain by CKD.
Yeah, yes.
First
Okay.
case, I don't know why it has so much of calcification. And that is one doubt. Another is, see, restenosis. See, it is a reinstant because you have kept a 48 stent, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
This is a very long stent. Probably, I don't know whether any difficulty in passing this 48 stent in the first instance. I have a doubt. Actually, restent usually we use drug-eluting balloon, not against stent. Isn't it? Am I right or not? Just verify.
Yeah. There are different, see, the meta-analysis has showed, suppose under expansion is there, you can simply use NC also. You can use the drug-eluting balloon mainly to avoid the overlap of the jaw. But if you see the comparison of the DEB trials with stent also, DES also, the results are not superior. DES is slightly superior compared to DEB. DEB we prefer, particularly in bifurcation lesions where there is a more overlap of layers, metal layers. That time jailing is more. That time you prefer the otherwise straightforward main vessel, better to go with restenting. That is the ideal thing because both are in some studies DEB slightly, but overall meta-analysis has showed DES is superior to DEB.
Okay. Right, sir. Next, Dr. Guru, please present. Yeah.
Sir. Good evening, sir. I'm going to present peripheral interventions. My first case is a case of complex iliac stenting. Here is a 47-year-old female. She is a known chronic rheumatic heart disease patient with a status post PBMB with atrial fibrillation. Came with a complaints of claudication pain in both thighs and buttocks since 6 months. And echo, it was showing only mild mitral stenosis with mild MR with mild PH. And INR is around near to therapeutic range with a hemoglobin with normal hemoglobin count. And CT peripheral angio, it was showing there is a total occlusion of distal abdominal aorta and bilateral common iliac occlusion. So our approach was both antegrade and retrograde. Antegrade through the right brachial artery, rather than we preferred right brachial instead of right radial because the spasms are more common. Torquability is the issue with the radial, and so brachial we can upsize the catheter and trackability is good. And retrograde we have taken the right femoral artery approach. And with the JR, we have taken the injection, sheath injection through the femoral root. It was showing the occlusion at the bifurcation of internal iliac and external iliac. And from the brachial approach, the angio is taken with the JR catheter. It was showing there is a distal abdominal aorta total occlusion just after the inferior mesenteric artery. And here there is a small dissection also just before the internal mesenteric artery also. So it was through the brachial approach, through antegrade only, we have crossed with 0.35 J-tip thermowire with knuckle wide technique. We have crossed through the true lumen from the abdominal aorta into the left common iliac artery. Then we have we have passed this JR catheter through the lesion, and then we have exchanged the thermowire with the 014 PTCA wire run through Y. Then we have dilated that common iliac left common iliac artery from the aorta with a coronary balloon of 3.5 into 48 mm. And then we have exchanged with the 0.035 thermowire, and then we with a peripheral balloon of size 6 into 8 mm, we have 80 mm. We have dilated the lesion. And post dilatation, there was an antegrade flow from the aorta into the iliac with workhorse wire that is run through by through. Once we have contact is true lumen, then we have exchanged with the thermo wire, and we have dilated the lesion with the PTC. First, initially with the PTCA coronary balloon itself, we have dilated. Then followed by with the peripheral balloon, we have dilated with a 6 into 60 mm balloon. So from the brachial approach into the aorta into the left iliac artery and right iliac artery, we have done with the kissing stent technique. We have deployed simultaneously the both stents. But here, because we have only taken the markers as a only we have missed the dissection part. So after deployment, we can see that there is a proximal to the stent, there is a residual stenosis. We have missed that lesion, and there is associated dissection also. So we have placed 10 into 40 mm self-expanding stents. And once two stents were deployed, there is the adequate coverage of the dissection part. And then we have post-dilated the both stents with a 9 into 40 mm and 9 into 80 mm balloons with the kissing technique. And after the post angio, it was showing a good result with no dissections and with glow. And next case, I am presenting infrapopliteal peripheral angioplasty lesion, and in the same case, we have done DK crush left main bifurcation also. So this patient, he is a 70-year-old gentleman who is a known diabetic, presented with right leg critical limb ischemia with a non-healing ulcer on the right foot, following injury to the right lower limb. Then on the second day, he presented. He had fever with episodes of loose motions and vomitings. On third day, he suddenly developed acute shortness of breath, and there was a profuse sweating and restlessness, and his pressures were around 200 over 110, and he was in frank pulmonary edema. So emergency, he was intubated, and he was started on dobutamine also, and we have given diuretics. And his counts were elevated, and ECG it was showing T inversions in V1 to V4, and tropi was positive, and echo was revealing global hyperkinesia with severe LV dysfunction. So on the fourth day, after with the diuretics and patient still on ventilatory support, we have done the angio. It was showing the ostial left main tight lesion, and there is a significant stenosis in the osteoproximal LAD also, and circ being dominant. And we have done even the peripheral angio also. In that peripheral angio, it was showing there is distally in all anterior tibial artery and posterior tibial artery, and even the peroneal artery is a diffuse disease is there. So our plan was, as the patient is totally unstable and presented, and he developed pulmonary edema with a severe LV dysfunction. Our plan was like whether to go for CABG or left main bifurcation stenting with a heart team approach. And as the patient is high risk for surgery with the high surgery, so we have planned for left main bifurcation lesion itself. So with IVAS guidance. So here the route was right femoral artery route with a 7 French guiding catheter, and UBU catheter was taken with a 3.5. Then we have passed BMW wire into the LAD and Versatile wire into the LCX. Here the plan was like, initially our plan was to do from left main to LAD, but before doing that we just want to, because as the LCX is dominant, we just want to know that ostial LCX whether there is any significant plaque or not. Is that once we put the stent from left main to LAD, is there any chance of pinching of left sir? And we have done the IVAS study, but I don't have the IVAS pre-IVAS study images, but it was showing there is a significant around 60% plaque burden at the ostial LCX. So then our plan has changed to left main bifurcation stenting. So we have taken the LCX as a main vessel and the LAD as a side branch, because the vessel diameter is much more as it is circ is dominant, and circ is at least 3.5 mm. So we have taken it as main vessel. So initially we have dilated the LAD lesion with a 2 into 10 mm Tazuna balloon. Even the left main to LAD also was dilated with the same balloon. Then we have placed a stent in the LAD, and we have adequately after stent deployment we have adequately crushed that LAD stent. So once the LAD stent was crushed, and we have dilated the left main to LAD, left main to LCX also we have done the dilatation. Then we can see clearly the waist at the level of the ostial LCX, which was dilated with a 2.75 into 12 mm non-compliant balloon. Then we have then we have done the first kissing dilatation with the 2.75 into 12 mm NC balloon in the LCX and 3.5 in the LAD. So as the LCX ostial LCX lesion was not still dilated, we have again pre-dilated with the 3.5 into 10 mm cutting balloon, because we thought it was more fibrotic, that's why it is not yielding. So check angio showed there is a good flow in the LAD, and but still after the stent we can see some haziness. So we thought there is a dissection. So we have covered that also with one more stent of 2.5 into 15 mm Orsiro stent. Once it was done, then we went ahead with the stenting of left main to LCX, covering the ostium of LMC also with a 3.5 into 22 mm Orsiro stent. Then we have crossed the LCX, and then we have dilated the LCX stent also. Then we have done the final kissing with a 3.5 into 12 mm NC trek in the LCX and 2.75 into 12 mm in the LAD. Then followed by we have done again the kissing with 3 into 10 mm in LAD and 3.5 into 12 mm in L6. The final pot was done with a 4 into 8 mm NC trick balloon. The post IVS, it was showing well opposed. Sorry, it was hanging.
Go to the next.
Yeah.
If it is not showing, go to the next.
So it was hanging. It was the well opposed stunt, both in the L6 and LED run we have taken. It was well opposed. The final result is good. So post PCA course, the AK was recovered with hemodialysis. Patient was extubated on 6th day, and his creatinine has come down to 1.7, and debridement of foot ulcer was done, and he had altered sensorium also. It was diagnosed as sepsis associated encephalopathy, and MRI was not showing any suggestion of any infarct, any stroke. On 11th day, we have planned for the peripheral angioplasty. Here we have planned for the antegrade approach through the right femoral artery with ultrasound guidance with a 6 French sheath. So we have exchanged with a long sheath, and then we have taken the injection over here, and it was showing there is a significant disease more distally in the anterior tibial artery, and even there is a lesions even in the peroneal and the tibial posterior tibial artery also. Here we have dilated with a drug-eluting balloon in the anterior tibial artery, and even in the peroneal arteries, and even in the posterior tibial artery. Final injection, it was showing there is not much significant residual stenosis. As it is more peripherally, we have just done only the drug-eluting balloon instead of stenting, because there is a high risk of restenosis in infrapopliteal area. It's better to go for balloon dilatation. That too with drug-eluting balloons, the chances of restenosis is very less. So once after grafting and after debridement, the patient is totally stable, and we have discharged uneventfully. And one more case is venous intervention. The 45-year-old who is a known case of CKD with end-stage renal disease on maintenance hemodialysis with a functioning left AV fistula. He was complaining of headache, left upper limb swelling, and puffiness of face. And CT venogram was showing there is a left upper limb and neck veins, which shows there is a thrombus or fibrotic severe stenosis at left in the left subclavian vein. And echo was normal, and hemoglobin, it is everything is normal. Only his serum creatinine is around 5.67. So here our approach with ultrasound guidance, our approach was left cubital vein. We have taken the sheath injection, which was showing there is a occlusion at the subclavian region and the total innominate occlusion. So we have passed the thermowire and through the axillary into the subclavian and innominate into the SVC into the RA and IVC. So once it is passed, we have dilated that subclavian and innominate vein with a 9 into 40 mm balloon. Once it is dilated, still there is a residual stenosis at the left at the innominate vein. So we thought of, as there is a residual stenosis even after dilatation, we thought of stunting this innominate vein. So we have stunted with a 18 to 56 mm peripheral stunt. So once it is stunted, there is a good flow, but still there is some residual stenosis in the subclavian vein also, that we want to dilate with the it is not that significant, so we thought of dilating with only with a drug-eluting balloon. So for the left subclavian vein, we have dilated with a drug-eluting balloon of 9 into 60 mm. We have done the 2 inflations, and we have for adequate absorption of that drug, we have maintained for 1 minute inflations twice. And injection was sure there is a good flow. with no significant stenosis. Post procedure, after 10 days, there is a significant decrease in the swelling of the upper limb, and there is normally there is a good AV fistula which is functioning. So in a complex aortic iliac occlusions, which is of the first case which I presented, it belongs to the classification of D. Mostly it is recommended recommended treatment is modality is surgery. But recent data, it is showing that even endovascular intervention can also be done in even in a type D cases also, which are complex cases, because the secondary patency rates are similar to surgery. And drug-eluting balloon is a very good option in infrapopliteal artery occlusions. And image-guided left main bifurcation stenting, even in very sick patients, it has a very good long-term outcome. Thank you.
Good. Open for discussion. Any comments? I think there is one question. Any comments?
KMK, there's a comment chat by Dr. Erra Srinivas. Erra Sivkumar is asked a question. See that?
Yeah. Yeah, tell me. Here it is there.
Shall I read the question for you?
In the innominate vein, use at least 12, preferably to 14 to 16 millimeter stents.
Hello, sir. Sir, it was me, Srikanth.
Yeah.
Sir, this just wanted to. It was a comment. I mean, in the innominate vein, 8 mm stent was used. Basically, I mean.
No, that was 10 mm stent.
10 mm.
10 mm. 10 mm and other stents were not available that time. Then we used 10 mm. That balloon was that subclavian balloon was smaller.
Right, sir. Because I mean, they invariably get restenosis. Because I mean, we have learnt this. So I mean, it's better to use at least a 14 mm or that's what we have learned from experience.
Actually, venous slightly you have to undersize. Artery, even now the even peripheral artery also they are saying previously you have to do 1.1 to 1 they were doing. Now that is a chronic irritation of the vessel because of this stent expansion. That there is even peripheral also they are saying slightly undersize. So that
venous actually we oversize by almost 30 to 50%, sir. Otherwise the stent will get embolized. It will be in the RA if you undersize.
No, it all depends upon the proximal distal and is it fibrotic or not. There if you see tight residual, even stent also it's holding very nicely. Really if it's a very good size, big size like that time, then you can go with bigger. Otherwise it can embolize, it can go and it can go distal.
Because I mean,
Sridhar, it's a very nice case. Sridhar is a very nice case.
Yeah.
So actually there's a lot of studies on this. All the venous lesions is better to just dilate them and leave them.
Balloon and
Yeah, you can dilate and
stent should never be put at the first attempt. It should be the last resort. At least after, in fact, these patients, what happened? They develop restenosis every 6 months. Every 6 months, you balloon dilate them and leave them. Every 6 months, balloon dilate them and leave them. Nothing else can be done for this patient. But the problem is, once you put a stent, that balloon also will stop working.
No, actually the venous interventions are recently picking up. Frankly,
No. This is recent, Sridhar, please.
I'm telling
Very
you.
important. And I'm not telling any comment. It's just probably learning. All of us learn from this.
There is no long-term data on venous
No,
intervention.
there are there. Sridhar. Lot of long-term data are there. Lot of long-term data in a chronic dialysis patient, subclavian
Dialysis
stenosis.
patients,
Lot of data is available. So what they say, plain balloon. Don't do anything. Every 5 months he'll come, you dilate, you leave him off. Dilate, you leave him off. That's that's what I don't know. Correct me if somebody is wrong. You have more experience.
No, as such, now then why the iliac vein stenting is coming? Why it's coming like a DVT?
No, iliac vein stenting is different ball game.
CRF as such is a restenosis is very high.
No, iliac vein stenting is different, Sridhar. This is basically secondary to the catheter they keep by the for the dialysis. This fibrosis secondary. Iliac vein stenosis is totally different. That is Truman syndrome is totally different. And it's just let us learn. I think no
yes.
comment expressed.
There is this type of two different opinions are
As
there
such,
definitely.
as such,
Yeah,
venous
and
intervention until that.
there are some people who strongly believe that venous interventions, probably balloon dilatation also.
Sir,
Anyway, the point is well taken.
Sir, we have a vascular surgeon. Can we just take his opinion? You are trained in
Yeah, he can comment.
Dr. Beam, sir, can you comment on this venous interventions? Your experience? Are you there, sir? Dr. Beam, can you hear me? I think after his talk, we'll ask him, sir. Otherwise,
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
yes, sir. Regarding this stent in the veins and
Discussion. I'm on the side of no stenting. I completely agree with
Okay.
the answer, but I agree with Dr. Sridhar Kasturi. In the iliac area, it is a method which is a mechanical compression. Unless we stent it, it won't stay open, because the mechanical compression of iliac artery onto the vertebra. So in between the vertebra and iliac artery, the iliac vein get compressed. That's the method. The stent role is, there are studies which are showing the role of the stent. But
Now there is a separate forum for the venous interventions. Now femoral vein stenting has come, IVC stenting has come, even DVT chronic stenting has come. Now the only CRF, whether artery or vein, everywhere the restenosis rate is very bound to be. But I think because the myointimal pressure, some people they do stenting, some patients they agonist. Even Takayasu also. If you take Takayasu, many people they defer stenting, but we have done so many stents, they are doing very well. Previously, people were saying only fibrotic lesion, don't do any stent. But we don't leave any Takayasu patient without any stenting. And we have follow-up of like 15-20 years also. Iliac total reconstruction was done. Because these interventions are very, very limited number. And follow-up is less. Yeah, then I think we can go to the...
Sir, I know you have too many cases. But,
if you time is there, I will talk. I have a 5-6 cases. But you can give it to someone else.
No, I think time is not that much now. I think we had, probably a good show of different variety of cases shown by you and your other colleagues. I think Mukesh, anything?
No. We should go to Dr. Beam, because we have Dr. Rajendra also in line.
I thank on behalf of the Telangana CSI, the Sunshine Hospital, Dr. Sridhar Kasturi and Dr. his team to show the good variety of bifurcation, left main and IVL usage, and also the venous intervention, and probably the regulating balloon usage in the peripheral arteries too. I thank you very much, sir. I know that you have a lot of cases, but for today, I think we'll reserve some cases from you. Then we'll utilize all the other cases for next show. I'll come back to you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Case. KMK.
Sir, yeah.
One first case, it was reported from India. I'll show the one case, and the remaining I don't show. This is like a Palmer arch, like a radial ulnar and Palmer arch, like a distal gangrene. I think no one has seen this case. So very unusual case. I'll show one case, and the remaining I will avoid.
Okay, fine.
Because many youngsters are there, they should learn these type
No,
of...
I want to use this for a next presentation.
No, I will show one case, and after that we will
Fine,
stop.
right.
Because this is very, very unusual. Now, are you able to see?
I think yeah, we are able to see you presentation, yes.
Yeah, this is an unusual case of gangrenous left ring finger with a septicemia. The 60-year-old male, diabetic hypertensive, he underwent PCF LAD and POBA to right coronary earlier, and came with early signs of septicemia. This is the CT angiogram. You see left index finger, definitely ring finger, is showing a gangrenous changes. And if you see here, ulnar artery, radial artery, and superficial deep palmar arch, you are unable to see. So he was having a terrible claudication of the ischemic left upper limb, and he showed signs of septicemia, early septicemia. This is the angiogram. You see, we are unable to see ulnar artery, radial artery, and unable to see this one. Then we thought we'll take this case and we'll do the intervention of the upper limb. Only few cases are reported in the world. So that's the reason I wanted to show this case. Ulnar artery, and you can see the deep palmar arch, superficial palmar arch, digital arteries, and the radial like index branch. And then we use 6 French, and because to avoid more injury to the, we can approach to the brachial artery, antegrade approach also, but patient had septicemia. We don't want to compromise the left upper limb arterial system. Then we approach to the femoral artery. So JR 6 French guiding catheter was used, and this is the filter FC wire was used. Ulnar artery dilated with 2 into 120 mm PTA balloon, and this is, you can see the multiple dilatation. Even we used Tajuna also, and this is a total occlusion. We are unable to see the ulnar artery, and you can't see the palmar, even superficial deep palmar artery. Then total occlusion. So we used multiple wides, and ultimately Tajuna could cross and dilate it. So then this is the, you can see there is a distal injection we are giving through the fine cross, and here total occlusion. We are unable to see anything. Then finally we use the knuckle wide technique. Then through knuckle wide technique we entered into the one of the digital artery. So third digital artery. Then this is the balloon dilatation with the 2 into 80 mm balloon, and this is again multiple dilatations. And you see the selective injection distally. Now we opened the palmar arch as well as the distal arteries are seen very well. And then again multiple dilatations carried in ulnar and radial artery, that is using 3 into 120 mm peripheral angioplasty balloon. This is the balloon dilatation. And we opened all the digital arteries. You see every digital artery, like all digital artery we were attempting to open from the arch. So this is the, so again retrogradely entered the radial artery, and one more wire passed into the radial artery, and entire the palmar arch was dilated. See, this is the dilatation. This is the dilatation of the radial artery, brachial artery injection, and the patient developed spasm. So we gave a 200 nitro and 2 mg Nucaran inside the radial and ulnar artery. So this is again a digital artery we are opening. Almost every branch was open with balloons, and then contrast injection. And then this, you can see very clearly, very well filling the palmar arch and the distal arteries. And is, these are the only recently one series of cases, only 28 cases they have shown, and in that one only success rate is only they have noted 80%. These are the single case, like one case proximal radial artery occlusion, distal radial artery occlusion, one almost with success, and this covered that all showed 5 cases, and majority are 4 or 5 cases. Very limited reports are there. So that's the reason I wanted to show this case. This patient fully recovered. Then with 1 month follow-up, you can see the distal arteries, palmar arch even, but ulnar artery is closed, radial artery fully patent. You can see the ulnar artery, but here it's occluded, but both palmar and deep superficial deep palmar arch are very well seen. You can see the, because the gangrene changes, because mild sepsis, the blackish discolor, this was amputated. Now you can see the movements of the hand, and perfectly became all right. Now almost 1 year is completed, no septicemia, fully recovered. So this case very unusual. I thought of showing this case, and thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. It's a nice case. Yeah.
Very unusual case.
Yeah.
And
Your leftover cases are reserved for us. We will use the next time. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Right.
Thank you.